You seem to still be up there somewhere.
Maybe I am. There are flying saucers.
Supposing they're Martians or something in there.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Asherz, and this is...
Tobias.
Tobias, how was your weekend?
Oh boy. Well, I've had 2 weekends since we
Yeah.
recorded last. Yeah, they both went really well. Frogman, of course, was a blast. So, thank you to Jeff Craig and everybody else who made that such a fun weekend. And then this most recent weekend, I got up to a bunch of my nerd stuff. That was great. I played some Traveler on Saturday morning, the preeminent sci-fi TTRPG. And then I played some Castles and Crusades that afternoon with a different group of friends. And then that evening, Emily and I both went to one of those murder mystery events. It's like a live action thing, and you go and you got to solve a fake murder. And that was all right. It was a lot of fun because we were there with friends. So Adam Benedict and his wife Amber were there, and then her cousin and her cousin's girlfriend, wife, I don't remember, but they're really cool too. And so we had fun hanging out together. It was not the best run event I have ever been to, and if it had been just Emily and I, we probably would have left like halfway through. But because we had friends there, it was actually really fun. So yeah, it's a good weekend. Then on Sunday, we went to celebrate my dad's birthday along with, March is a crazy birthday month for my family, along with my niece and nephew. They're twins, and their birthday is the day after my dad's. So, sucks to be him, I guess, because then they just get combined birthdays.
Yeah, true. Well, that's true. I mean, the twins are inevitable, right? They're twins. Their birthday's going to be combined, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, your dad, he just has to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, he had his own birthday for like 50 years, and then
Right.
these twins came along, and now he's like, well, fuck. Okay, fine. I guess it's everybody's birthday.
Everybody starts standing up. It's my birthday. No, it's my birthday too.
Right? We'll just split it fucking 10 ways. Great. I hated having my own birthday.
Oh my gosh.
So
Poor,
he's a
poor
good sport
Mr.
about it.
Tobias Sr. I don't know what his name is. I'm just going to assume it's your name.
Sure, fine. Great. As far as anybody knows, that's what it is. So
That's what it is.
it's Tiberius Frumpington Wayland V, actually.
Okay,
So,
there you go.
in case you were wondering, yeah, that's my dad's real name.
That's Tiberius is a great name.
That is a really cool name. I wish that was my name.
Yeah, I'm gonna start telling people that's my name. So.
You should. I mean,
That
it's
sounds like a
Captain
great
Kirk's middle
weekend.
name. So,
Is it really?
fuck yeah, James Tiberius Kirk.
That's that's awesome.
Right? You shouldn't be surprised that I know that. Out of everybody you know, I would be the
I'm
person
not.
who knows that.
I'm more surprised that his middle name is Tiberius than I am that you know that it's Tiberius.
Sure. Fair enough.
Wow.
So, yeah,
No,
it totally is.
sounds like a good, like a pretty good 2 weekends there. Yeah, I saw your guys' pictures. You looked so fancy.
Yeah, well, you had to dress up. So I hadn't worn a tie in like 2 years. It had been since like Emily's cousin's wedding, which was easily 2 years ago, would have been the last time that I had to wear a tie for anything. So yeah, no, it was fun. It was nice to get dressed up. All the women wore heels, which they fucking regretted immediately, because that's the other thing. Like that's the female equivalent of wearing a fucking necktie is heels. Only heels are way worse in every way. So yeah, it's like, oh, I'm slightly uncomfortable around my neck, whereas Emily's just like, you got to carry me to the car. These heels
Yeah.
are killing me.
No, they're terrible. I don't recommend. There's women that are like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. They're so comfortable. I'm like, okay, you fucking pick me ass bitch, shut the fuck up, because they're not.
They don't look comfortable. I don't know. They're
They're
not. They're clearly
not.
not designed for comfort.
It's horrible. It's not great. Yeah, that's but you guys look good, so
Thank you.
that's what it's all about. The comfort
Right.
was worth it. So
Sure.
very
Absolutely.
cool.
Yeah. How has your time been?
Oh wow. I also went to Frogman Festival.
What?
I did. I was there.
No,
I
it's
know.
true.
I didn't see you at all.
No, not at all. Certainly weren't the only person I talked to the whole time.
It was it was good. Obviously, it's good every year, right? It going from the 1 day event to the 2 day event is a bold choice, but I think that's he'll probably keep doing that. I don't think it was a bad choice.
That's okay.
Um, I kind of enjoyed that Sunday was a lot more low maintenance, right? For everybody else. So I think if he does continue to do it, it's not necessarily to make money, but just so the people that are involved working the event can kind of enjoy it a little bit easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's a
I
nice
can see
treat.
that. The difficulty is going to be just from my experience in going to these events, and I've been to so damn many of them over the past 7 or 8 years. Uh, is going to be the financial incentive for people to stick around on Sunday.
Yeah, very true.
Because you know, honestly, if it was any other event, I probably would have just left on Sunday. But because it's Jeff and you and all of these other people that are my friends that I like, I was like, no, it's cool. Like I will hang out. It's no big deal. But if you start to try to get people who aren't me, it's going to be tough because I'm telling you, like I've been to a lot of events, and you will get people, especially like the quote unquote big names. They're not sticking around for that Sunday. They'll fucking
No.
leave every time. They are going to leave because it's not worth it for them, and which I get because you're not making any money that Sunday. Um, so yeah, I mean, it just kind of is what it is. Like I will be happy to go and stay every Sunday for forever. Like that's fine from my perspective, but it's going to be something that's gonna come up. And for vendors too, like I can't imagine if I was just some random vendor and again, the only thing I cared about was making money at this event. Sunday, it's not doing it for me. So we'll have to see.
Well, especially if if you took off work Monday, right?
Yeah.
So normally you have a 1 day event. You go to your 1 day, you go out that night. Sunday you go home, right? You spend that day driving home. But if you have a 2 day event, well, now what? You
Right.
Most people aren't going home Sunday night. So then if you're taking off work, well, you have to consider that. How much am we losing in that regard?
Right.
So I think it depends on where you're located. I know I was definitely ready to go home Sunday night, even though I think a lot of people were too exhausted to do anything on Saturday, and they were like, "We're just gonna go out on Sunday." Um, yeah, that wasn't me. I was going home. I was I was done.
I don't really go out regardless. So like that was not
That's fair.
a temptation for me at all.
Yeah, I was like, we did go out a little bit on that Saturday, and it was interesting, but didn't stay out too late. I was not feeling it. I ended up being um, very sick, and Frogman Festival weekend was like the beginning of that.
Oh no.
And I didn't really realize it. And I hate that because it's like every year when this event comes around, something fucking terrible happens. So the first year, I got locked out of my house.
I remember that.
Remember
Yeah.
that? Me too. I'll never fucking forget it.
Yeah,
Thank God for
didn't
Anne.
yeah, I was gonna say, didn't your friend Anne have to? Anne was there this past weekend. That was nice to hang out with her. She's very cool as well. But yeah, didn't she have to break into your house?
She did. Because that's Anne for you. She can break into your house if needed. But she's also super reliable. So I went out to my car to go get. I don't have a washer and dryer at my house. I live in an apartment, so I do my laundry at my mom's. Went out to my car to go grab my laundry basket out of my car and went to go back in, and my door handle broke, and I couldn't turn the knob to get in. And I'm also a responsible person, and I lock all my windows, so couldn't get in any of those either. So I knocked on every single person's door in my apartment complex. Literally nobody answered at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. And didn't have my phone, didn't have my keys, didn't have my cigarettes. Because that was the other thing. I also forgot my fucking car keys.
I like how
to
you
the
listed
car.
cigarettes as though that would have been a useful item.
It would have been.
I don't know how
Because
that would have helped you, but okay,
it
fair.
wouldn't have helped me get in, but it would have helped me emotionally, right? Because I was a fucking wreck. I'm knocking on everybody's door.
These are my emotional support cigarettes. I need them.
Fucking, I'm outside. I got no bra on. I'm outside looking like a crazy person knocking on everybody's door. Fucking 6 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, and Anne, she's not the type of person to text you and be like, should I head over? She'll just head over. And thank God
Yeah.
she did. And I'm sitting on my porch crying, like, oh my God, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Anyway, so that happened the first year. And then I couldn't get a hold of my maintenance guy the whole fucking weekend. So she had to break back into my house for me to even get into it. It's crazy.
Ridiculous.
So then last year I wasn't doing good health wise. I was having a lot of untreated blood pressure issues, and so I felt like fucking shit. And even like I was like giving my presentation last year, and I was like gonna pass out. I don't know
Oh
how I
no.
made it through the whole thing. I don't know how I made it through the day. I was not doing good. And so I get treated. I'm like, yay, awesome, great. This year, knock on wood, nothing terrible is happening. And then I just kept not feeling the greatest. Friday night, I was like trying to go to sleep and I kept like having chills. But then I woke up on Saturday and I felt okay. But then I would just randomly feel like shit. It wasn't the worst year, but something happens every fucking year, and that's the point. And so then I, kind of come home and I kind of calm down and end up with a respiratory something or the other, which wasn't anything serious, but still annoying enough to just kind of, again, be annoying.
Sure.
And everybody and their grandmother, which is awesome, but not great when I don't feel good, wants to talk to me about this fucking book. And again, that's so cool, but I'm like, can we talk about this next week or something?
Right.
So, that has been good. So the Android Cold book has done really well. I'm sure all of you purchased it because you're responsible listeners that want to support both Tobias and myself. So you buy everything we put out there. That's done great. So good. In fact, I had physical copies come in, and I was asked to do this past weekend, like a little book signing at the Nerd Bar.
Well, that's fun.
So it gave me an excuse to go hang out at the Nerd Bar. Also gave me an excuse to offload the books with other people who locally wanted the book and wanted me to sign it instead of trying to make up certain dates. So I went and did that. And, for something that was kind of planned in less than a 12-hour window, it went okay. But man, I felt so out of place there. And I know you keep telling me to go and you keep telling me to just walk up to these people and talk to them, but I was not comfortable doing that.
Why? What was so bad about it?
It wasn't like terrible. It's just, I don't know. All these people obviously know each other. And I didn't know really how to approach these tables. Like, yes, they're there to play a game, but the game is kind of secondary. They're all there to hang out and catch up. So
I'd have to see it. I don't know. I guess it depends on what game they're playing too. Like, were you able to discern what anybody was playing?
well, there's 4 different groups going on.
Yeah.
So no, I wasn't.
And are these organized groups? Are they clubs? Are they just random people?
I guess I couldn't really tell. They didn't seem like they were clubs. I would imagine with like clubs that they would be. Well, I guess unless they do it, they've done it for a long time and they know each other really well. But again, I'd imagine I would have heard a lot more talking about the games in general. Like I did not hear any of these people actually talking about the game at any point in time. Like they were all talking about, like, I don't know, at one point this girl goes up to get a drink and then I guess she just started dating this one guy and, one of the guy friends was kind of talking to him to see how it was going and
Oh, yeah. See, it could just be random people who just showed up to play a game with their friends or whatever. So, like I was saying, you got to find out when the organized clubs run their games and then show up for something like that.
Yeah, I do got to figure that out. So,
I
but
bet it's not that
again,
hard.
it gave me an opportunity to, kind of go and sit back and just enjoy the time. So you know what I did, and of course, people showed up and we talked about, Indrid or whatever, and
Yeah.
talked about other weird stuff. And that was okay. So I did that, and then I also watched a very interesting movie that I think people should check out. It's called Mysterious Skin. You ever heard of this one, Tobias?
Mysterious skin? It's not ringing any
Yeah.
bells.
It's so full disclosure, I kind of talk about my flavor of movies. You guys already know they're usually kind of disturbing and terrible. But this one's really cool. There is rape in it, so be prepared for that. But it follows two young men, one of which is a male prostitute, and the other one is kind of a strange guy who's like obsessed with like UFOs and alien abductions. And they both have a common childhood experience together. But it's super interesting because, of course, it talks about, trauma and how that ends up, um, you know, manifesting later in life. And for people that are like into that type of thing, that are into like, ufology and whatnot, I think it's important. I think we don't really talk about that a lot. Nearly not nearly enough, and this one definitely touches on that in a very strange way. So I don't want to give too much away. I think you could probably already guess from the context. But check that out, Mysterious Skin. It's really
Hmm.
good.
Okay.
It's really good. Okay. Well, time is up. I guess we have to talk about the news now. Um,
Ugh, fine.
I know you hate that. I know you want to talk more about Mysterious Skin, but go
Maybe.
watch it first. Um, So I do have one news. I'm really kind of surprised that the news, I thought I'd come back to this and there'd be like a whole bunch of news and a whole bunch of shit I missed out on. And it turns out there's nothing going on.
No, I think that the anomalous is having something of a downturn lately.
Yes, I agree with that. We've definitely had weeks where there's no news. In the 5 years that I've done this show, there has never, I think this is the longest streak. But I do have a news, and it's not necessarily, it's more weird news as opposed to anomalous news. So
Sure, that's fine.
we'll get into that. So South Carolina recently executed an inmate via firing squad.
Whoa.
So we kind of talked a couple of months ago about the when they did the like the gas chamber execution. I don't think it was South Carolina that did that one. But this one's kind of, it seems very primitive, right? Firing squad. Um, what's interesting about this in particular, and I'm not going to get into the inmates and their crime and whatever what they had done, but I am going to get into the fact that the inmate was the one who actually suggested doing the firing squad, which says a lot about death row and kind of what happens to these people, because he had two options initially. It was the electric chair, which I don't think anybody ever wants to do that, or it was lethal injection, and he was genuinely afraid of doing lethal injection because he was worried that he would be too awake and he would end up, drowning in his own blood and mucus. So he opted to do the firing squad route instead, and that's
Fair
very
enough.
sad.
It is very sad. I mean, I guess I don't know. I can't imagine being in that position. I think there's a part of me, and probably a part of almost anybody listening to this right now, who would like to think that they would just be like, you know what? Yeah, fuck you. You want to kill me? You got to do the firing squad. You
Right.
know, like, but yeah, talk about an impossible choice.
Well, and he ended up, he wrote the case up because, of course, he tried to get pardoned, right, and
Sure.
go the life in prison route. He did. He was a model inmate, but of course, they weren't having none of that. So it was going to be what it is. So his argument that he ended up kind of winning this case on was the fact that South Carolina, their lethal injection mix is a secret, which is really shitty. It shouldn't be, right? That's
No,
fucking
that seems
weird.
weird.
And won the case for firing squad, and I mean, it's crazy to talk about this because it's so primitive. Which actually, the last firing squad took place in the United States about 15 years ago, so it's not like we're that far removed from it. We're really not.
Wow.
But they have him in a room. They have him in the execution room, and he is dressed in a black jumpsuit, a black hood, and wore a fucking. This is the part that's shitty. That I think the families should sue the fuck out of the state prison. Wore a
Hmm.
white T-shirt with a red bullseye on it.
Well, was that his idea?
No, but I couldn't figure that out if it was or wasn't. Now, if it was and he was trying to make a statement, okay, great, wonderful. Those are his wishes. If it wasn't, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
That obviously that would be incredibly unprofessional if the prison made him wear it. If that was like his choice, then great, I guess.
it's just so terrible. So, of course, people have been, discussing whether or not firing squads are ethical, whether or not we should use them in favor of the lethal injection. A lot of people have issues with the lethal injection. Just when you're talking about killing people in general, I don't think we all really can just collectively agree on the best way to do it, right? But
Yeah,
it's
probably just
been,
shouldn't have state sanctioned killing of inmates, period.
right. You would
Just
think
saying.
so. It costs more money in the long run, and people just refuse to believe that because people don't like facts, and that's a you problem. But
Sure.
when we talked about the gas chamber situation and how horrible that was, I think you and I both kind of collectively agree to the fact that thankfully we're not in the position to have any personal connection to anybody on death row, right? So it's not
Right.
really, at the end of the day, not up to us in general, but I still agree. It's very sick. If you want to read a detailed account of exactly how that took place, AP News did a great job at sharing every gory detail about the whole situation. We don't know who the officers were that shot the guns. They're anonymous. They were volunteers, though. And some people kind of think that is, you're kind of just breeding more killers by doing that. Especially if they were just like correctional officers, that haven't killed anybody before.
I mean, I guess. I don't know. That seems like a lot of speculation to me.
It is, it definitely, well, it definitely can be, but I think it's like this, people are like, oh, once a dog tastes blood, it just keeps going for more. I mean, that's just something people say, right? It's never been proven.
Right. I'm just
We
saying
don't
that
know.
that just sounds like people who already don't like authority figures just finding another reason to dislike them.
Yeah. We don't know, but you know what? I'm of the stance that I really wish we didn't have to be in a situation to potentially find out.
Right.
Either
No,
way,
sure. Yeah, I
you
agree.
know. I
Nobody should
bet
be
they
in nobody should be in that position. Not the
yeah,
person being executed, not the people executing them.
yeah. I bet they don't get paid enough for that, right? So,
I guarantee it, and I don't think there's much chance that everybody involved is some kind of sociopath just waiting for the opportunity to kill somebody. So there's almost certainly a level of trauma that is being applied to everybody, forced to take part in this. Like think about somebody doing that out of a sense of duty or something. I'm sure it's not. It's just putting them under unnecessary harm as well. So we should just knock it off. There's no
yeah.
point.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a hot button topic. You got people that feel however they feel about it, right? Whatever side of the spectrum you're on, in general. And then shit like this just muddies the waters even further. Um, some people think that he shouldn't have had the dignity to choose how he died. And, again,
Yeah,
that's not up to me,
yeah. Retributive justice is not the best way to go about it. I get it. Like there's emotions involved. People's families are hurt.
Right.
And they're angry and they deserve to be angry because they were hurt, like
Oh, yeah,
as
they
a
do.
lot of
And,
these
again, I'm
people
not
really did it.
a person that's in a position to make that decision for how they feel it was handled or, whatnot. They haven't
Right.
spoken out about it as far as I know, which is, I hope they don't, because you
Right.
know how the internet is, and
But that's the reason that they should be the last person that we're asking their opinion on how this should be handled. Because I mean, take it into account, sure, but of course they can't be objective about something like this.
right, right,
Obviously.
yeah, exactly. Um, so I just thought that was really interesting. I didn't think that I would live in the future to see this happen to somebody.
Yeah, it's
My
wild.
personal stance on it is, maybe we should just like halt executions until we have like a really good surefire way that's going to do it ethically, right? You would think. But that's me. Who am I?
Yeah, well, the issue is, at least from my perspective, is I would rather 100 guilty people go free than one innocent person, be murdered.
Yeah. And that
So that
happens so often.
more often than people think, and the fact
Yeah.
that it happens at all should be why we just don't do it. So
Yeah. So anyway, that was my news.
yeah, great upbeat news.
I know, right?
All right, well, I think I have something with a little more levity to it here. So, did you know that in a recent survey, over 3 million UK motorists say they have seen a ghost while driving? It's true. So,
Wow.
yeah, I receive press releases fairly regularly, and every once in a while, one of them is interesting enough that I'll publish it. A lot of them are just like people who want to advertise for like their movies and creative projects and stuff, and that's
Sure.
really cool. And I appreciate them sending me that stuff, but it's not what I do. You know what I mean? Like I don't run an entertainment website or anything. But this was a press release from a PR rep who I think, yeah, put this together for this vehicle leasing firm, Select Car Leasing. And so I'm sure this is just a fun way for them to sort of get their name out there, because these kinds of surveys get a lot of attention, but that doesn't make the survey itself any less interesting. So there was a survey conducted of about 1,000 people, actually, 9% of whom said they had seen a ghost while driving in the United Kingdom. So if you extrapolate that out to to the general population, right, then that's the equivalent of like 3.79 million motorists. So if you consider the 1,000 person, the 1,000 people surveyed as representative of the overall population, then you can extrapolate that to this 3.79 million number, which is interesting. Now, furthermore, 8% said they had seen a UFO while driving. A further 8% said that they had seen an anomalous big cat, which is one of my favorite cryptids because it's so specific to like this one area. Anyway, and now you may not associate Bigfoot with the UK, but 3% of the people responding to the survey said that they had seen Bigfoot. So fascinating stuff. I love it. I love surveys like this, and I hope people keep sending them to me.
I don't know how I feel about the Bigfoot thing.
Bigfoot in the UK, you don't like it?
Not a fan. Not a big
What?
fan of Bigfoot in the
Talk to
UK.
Andy McGrath about it.
Is he the UK
He
Bigfoot
knows.
guy?
He's my UK Bigfoot guy.
I mean, how would Bigfoot have gotten there?
Magic. I don't know. Interdimensionality.
Yeah, well,
UFOs.
That's a good point.
Rode in on a Loch Ness monster. The possibilities are endless. All I'm saying is, and this is true for everything that we study, right? Our own lack of imagination cannot be held as evidence against a reported phenomenon. It just can't. So if people are reporting it, it's not really our job to say, well, that's impossible. How could this even happen? We have to be like, okay, well, shit. If people are reporting it, how is it possible? How is this happening? You know what I mean? So
You can't see me, but I'm shaking my head reluctantly in
I know.
agreement. I get it.
Sorry.
Um, you're not wrong, but god damn it.
I get it.
It just gets weirder and weirder every day. Um, not like UK Bigfoot is a new thing. It's not.
No, it's not.
Super interesting. I find it interesting. I mean, because this is again just while driving. Like this is not like
Right.
in your home taking a hike. This doesn't have anything like that going on. So that's really neat. And I think it does it offers a sort of litmus test. Obviously, they probably didn't survey everybody in the UK. I'm sure.
No.
But I've always said like the paranormal, stuff like ghosts. It's definitely a more popular topic than the other ones, and that shows here. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's pretty neat.
Oh, for sure. I mean, ghosts have been the kings of the paranormal since, oh boy, well, at least for the last 25 years, right? Turn of the century, we got ghost hunters, and it was all downhill from there in terms of anything that wasn't ghosts. UFOs are having a bit of a moment right now, and
They
they've
are.
always kind of been neck and neck with ghosts and hauntings. But, for a while, I mean, an easy like 2 decades, the like ghosts and hauntings, like ghost hunting had pulled ahead of just everything else. So
Oh yeah, it's the most talked about, and I think the one that people are more willing to accept as reality, which is interesting, but
yeah, it's the
very
one we
cool.
all want to believe in.
I want to believe in all of it, even
Sure,
UK
but
Bigfoot.
like everybody, I think
Yeah.
there's this universal uh, desire that we have to believe in ghosts and hauntings because it speaks to some kind of existence, after death, some kind of afterlife, which is a very attractive proposition to most people. I can't say everybody, but the majority of people.
Well, I don't know. I hear you, but are ghosts really sexier than Bigfoot? Really, they're really more attractive.
I don't know. We just don't even know what Bigfoot's dick looks like. I can't. These are the important questions. I can't say for sure without knowing what Bigfoot's dick looks like. Is it a weird dog dick? That's not sexy.
That's true.
So
You're in the woods. You come upon a Bigfoot and a ghost. You look at them both and go, "Okay, pull your dicks out."
yeah, I mean, I've seen Ghostbusters, and that ghost that Dan Aykroyd got down with was
True.
pretty sexy.
That's true.
So
That's very
right,
true.
like, what's the Bigfoot equivalent of that? We don't know yet. The science isn't there. So as soon as it is, I will be the first person to judge who is sexier. But
And
until
nobody
then,
likes a mantis cock, so you
no,
know.
there's nothing is less sexy than a mantis cuck.
Yeah,
Like
that's
nothing,
just
I can't think of a thing less sexy.
that's just gross, you know.
Right. Fucking weirdos.
Anyway, I'm sure there are people that are attracted to mantis cocks. I guess we won't kink shame, right? No, let's not
Yeah,
isolate our 2 listeners that are into that type of thing.
right. That's their business. It's fine. We just don't have we don't have to talk about it.
You right. You get why it's weird. You guys know better. Come on. Um,
Right.
well, that's some good news in right there.
Yeah, quality news and all around.
That's some good news. Um, well, let's get into the fun topic. This is and it is. This is a very fun topic. We've done a lot of
It
these
is.
really silly, fun topics lately. I can tell the mood I was in when I did this schedule. I was in a very silly mood.
That beats
Um,
the alternative.
It does. It does. But this week we're going to finally talk about Gef the Talking Mongoose. This is a wild story. At minimum, right? Tobias, what's your
It
history
is.
with Gef? I'm sure you've been familiar with Gef for a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, there's no doubt. This is one that I have been aware of for a very long time. Familiar with for not quite as long, but certainly long enough. And this is one too that I think has found a certain amount of internet fame over the past few years. So it's one that more people than you might suspect are already aware of, like even if they aren't familiar with the real story and they don't know the names of all the investigators involved and so on and so forth. A lot of people at least have heard of Gef the Talking Mongoose.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I feel like this is like like say you're a weird parent, right? And you're into these topics and you got kids. This is the story that you tell your kids to get them interested in it. Right? It's just it's very wholesome in a way, right? It's not necessarily scary. And it's just so absurd. I mean, just Gef the Talking Mongoose, just that part. You're like, what the fuck am I getting into here? So,
Right.
let's go ahead and, for anybody who isn't familiar, I think people have even the people, I mean, I think they recognize the title. I think there's going to be a lot of people that have never really researched it, but they know of it.
Sure.
So let's go ahead and get into it. So the saga of Gef starts with the Irving family. So we've got James, his wife Margaret, and their daughter Viori? How do you say her name?
I was waiting because I knew two normal names and then a fucking weird one, of
Why?
course, because we can never have just all normal names in a story, not in the paranormal.
No,
I'm sorry. I'm sure it's a perfectly normal
Viori?
name on the Isle of Man or something. So okay, my bad. But for the rest of us here, I have no idea. I'm gonna say Voiri.
Voiri is what it looks like to me. Voiri.
Let's just go with it. And if people get mad at us, well, tough shit, because people mispronounce my name all the time.
You know what? We said it. We said the name. At least we said Gef right. It's not Gef. Even though I found out there are people who had no idea that it was Gef and not Gef.
Why would they assume it's Gef?
Because it's a G.
So what? Use your just use your head, people. Use common sense. Of course,
like
it's Gef.
It's like the GIF versus GIF argument, I guess.
Yeah, but we know. Okay, we know how GIF should be pronounced because it is an acronym for something.
Yeah, and the G stands for graphics, not graphics.
Right. Correct.
So anyway, and whatever. It's Gef. Okay, this is people spell their name this way. Gef with a G. Like,
you know what throws
real.
me off? Like every single time is Tom spelled THOM. Every time I want to be like, okay, Thom.
Oh my God. I have a great story about a thumb. Maybe I'll tell it on the Patreon. It's really good. It's really juicy. Patreon.com/Wednesdays Talk if you want to hear my story of thumb. It involves the Mothman, kind of.
Oh, nice. So yeah, we'll have even more Mothman content on the Patreon.
We'll do a little thumb story. Anne was there. So anyway.
Oh, good.
Viewer, I'm calling her the girl. Okay, the girl. She's like 13 at the time that this starts taking place. September 1931 is where the party began. So the Irvings were at home one night. This is what they claim. They were at home one night and they started hearing strange tapping sounds in the walls of the house that quickly grew into these odd growls. Now, the growls eventually would turn into what they described as gurgling sounds, but they said, quote, like a baby learning to talk. So I had a baby, right, at one point, and she did not gurgle.
What?
Yeah, I don't babbling.
Okay.
Maybe. But gurgling I would be worried.
Right. Like, yeah, 911. My baby's been gurgling for like 20 minutes.
Gurgling. Yeah. She did growl a lot. That was actually one of her things. It was pretty cool.
Oh, good. That's probably fine. I wouldn't worry about it.
Some people, but no, she didn't gurgle. Yeah, I mean that's like a horrifying noise. So I'm gonna assume what they mean is babbling. Then again, it was 1931. Maybe they didn't have babble at the time. I don't know.
They definitely did, because the word Babel comes from the Tower of Babel, which is a biblical reference.
So are you saying that babies are satanic?
I mean, I'm not saying they're not, if that's where we want to go.
I agree with you. So as somebody who had one once, yeah. Again, mine did growl and babble. So
See? That's the first thing I thought of.
Anyway, so they heard these noises happening and they're like, what in the actual fuck is going on? But they couldn't quite figure out what was happening. And so James decides to start like growling back at it and notice that it would mimic the sounds that he was making. And he was like, oh, well, shit. If it can do that, I bet I could teach it how to talk.
I bet.
Whatever it was. So.
Worth a shot.
And he did. So he started teaching the sound in the wall how to talk. At first, the sound, was only able to make it was only able to like parrot what they had said, So they'd be like, I don't know, what's a funny word? Give me a funny word.
Boobs.
So they'd be like boobs, and it would be like boobs.
Boobs.
They're like sweet. And then it said sweet.
It was all high-fiving.
Yeah. Like, we made it say boobs. Whatever. And then it would start repeating back. But eventually, the creature did learn to, I'm sorry, I keep calling it the creature, the thing in the walls, did learn to talk back. And once it did, eventually, they would get out that the creature's name was Gef. And he would tell the Irving family that he was the ghost of a mongoose that was born in New Delhi in 1852.
Yeah, obviously. No, that's fucking weird as shit. That doesn't make any sense.
Totally normal, though. Totally normal.
Of course.
Okay, that's great. Gef would make other claims later on down the line, and we'll kind of get into some of those claims here in a little bit. But this is just kind of the beginning of it. As Gef continued to talk with the family, get to know them, he definitely grew in personality. He was kind of a known prankster in the house. Playing pranks on them and, but also playing games with the family and maybe some visitors. He was sometimes kind of an asshole. He would say really asshole-ish things.
Like a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time, really.
But they were all just like, oh, Gef.
Right. That's our Gef. It's just like a shitty 80s sitcom.
Margaret would be, she'd be getting dressed into something else. And he's like, you're really going to wear that? And she's like, oh, Gef.
Oh, Gef, you shut your fucking mouth.
James he'd be in the bathroom taking a piss. And Jeff's like, wow, that's what you're working with. They'd be like, oh, right. Gef.
Oh, yeah.
The 13-year-old daughter should be making out with her pillow. And he's like, wow, this is disturbing.
Okay, frankly, like the most disturbing part of that would be Gef watching a 13-year-old make out with her pillow.
Well, why wouldn't he?
Well, let's get Chris Hansen from Dateline in here. Maybe Gef needs to just sit down for just a minute.
He sits down with him and he's like, "So, when did you start being a mongoose?"
Right. So, did you know that Voiry was 13 when you were haunting her house?
Yes. Well, she never said.
Well. The police aren't going to care, Gef. Just saying.
But anyway, so again, he was definitely some type of asshole, but they just kind of laughed it all off, right? They're just like, oh, whatever. He would do kind of party tricks, I suppose. So as they continued to get to know Gef and Gef continued to get to know them, word kind of started getting around. I didn't mention this is all taking place on the Isle of Man.
Even better, it's Isle of Man in 1931, which means this lonely farm was on top of. Okay, now I should say that Harry Price described it as being basically on top of its own mountain, but not quite a mountain. So a big ass hill. So he said it took about an hour to hike up there. Harry Price, if you're not familiar, is, an old timey paranormal investigator known as something of a skeptic, from the earlier part of last century. So think 30s, 40s, whatever. Anyway, my point is, it's this lonely farmhouse on top of this giant fucking hill on the Isle of Man, which is already an isolated fucking area. But it has no electricity. It has no running water. They don't even have a fucking radio. They got nothing in terms of entertainment or modern amenities at that time. Because you think in the 30s at that point,
Yeah.
the 30s, that was a decade when car ownership exploded. Like everybody had a car. Electricity, you would have had that even in rural areas. Like that was another big deal happening at that time. So they hadn't caught up to the decade, or the decade hadn't caught up to them, however you want to think about it, at all at this point in this lonely, haunted fucking farmhouse.
Yeah. It was definitely very boring.
Yeah, it would have had to have been.
There's not a lot going on there. Until Gef came along. So of course Gef was popular locally, right? Everybody was like, I'm not sure how many people lived on the Isle of Man at the time, but anybody that did, all 12 of them were like, oh wow, this is great.
Right.
I don't know, it was probably more than 12 people, but
I'm sure.
either way, word starts spreading and neighbors start to kind of come around and they're checking it out. Who is this Gef guy? Is he single? They want the details on Gef and what's going on. And so, neighbors would come over, and while they wouldn't see Gef, they were able to hear Gef. And Gef would do things like, they'd flip a coin and he would be able to accurately call out what the coin landed on, as if he could see it, even though they could not see him. He
Right.
would
And he was accurate some of the time. We got to be clear. This was not some crazy magic trick where he had this uncanny ability to guess coin flips.
No.
He was only accurate some of the time.
So if me and Tobias were in person and I turned my back on him and I flipped a coin and I said, okay, Tobias, you tell me what it is. I mean, that's basically what they were doing.
Right. And if I guessed it like half of the time, you wouldn't think, oh, he's got magic fucking powers.
I wouldn't. But people on the Isle of Man in 1931, they definitely would think
That's true.
that.
Some of them, at least half of them.
I think all of them probably did.
Maybe
it was
all
when
of
the
them.
outsiders started coming in and they were like, wait a minute. So
something isn't adding up here.
And then of course he would throw a ball back and forth between, some of the rafters and the ceilings in the attic to people. So they would catch the ball and throw it back and not see who caught it. It was a great fun time for these people.
Well, and by people, largely, we're only talking about Jim, Margaret, and Voiry. Pretty much all of the amazing physical manifestation stuff only happened to the daughter. And then maybe Jim or Margaret might catch a glimpse of Gef, but the only person who could ever actually see him was Voiry for some reason. And then nobody else ever fucking did.
No, nobody else did. Well, the neighborhood kids, they would come around and who were friends with the girl. They would come around and, play with Gef or whatever. And some of them would claim to catch a glimpse here and there, but nothing really accurate. You're right. Voiry was the only person who was able to look at Gef in full. Gef would not reveal himself to anybody. Again, James and Margaret, they might catch a little glimpse of him. But Voiry kind of described him, very much as a mongoose, light skin, long body, but small. Just think of a mongoose, and that's what you got, I suppose. It wasn't anything outrageous.
If you think it's weird, by the way, the mongoose was actually introduced to the Isle of Man not too long before this happened by somebody who wanted to use them to curb the island's out of control rabbit population.
Interesting.
So, yeah, like it's not as though this was some super exotic animal that nobody there would have ever seen or heard of. No, this is an animal that lived on the Isle of Man at that time.
I guess I didn't think to look into that. I did look into um, the mongoose in general. I don't know why I didn't think to look at the population. That was really stupid of me.
Oh,
But
that's why there's two of us.
you know what? That's a good point. You're right. If I did the show by myself, man, I'd be fucked. I'd be like, I don't know nothing about no mongoose. Um, I did look a little bit into kind of the history of mongoose ownership and how they were essentially the original house cat. So we used to keep mongoose to help control the local rodent population and snakes and things like that. But eventually, I think we decided we liked cats better. And then that became commonplace to have a cat. I don't know why they didn't have more cats on the Isle of Man.
I don't know either.
You know,
I don't-
the cats are efficient at their job and they also like you. Whereas like mongoose typically don't like you like cats do. So
Right.
they
Yeah,
don't
I don't
care.
think I would want to keep a mongoose around unless we had like a huge cobra problem or something.
Well, right. Would you rather have a mongoose or a cat? I mean, let's be real.
Well, I would rather have a mongoose if I needed somebody to kill a cobra, but that's a
That's
very specific situation.
that's true. Yeah, I don't want to put my cat at risk for that.
No,
Um,
cats don't eat cobras, but
no,
a mongoose will.
a mongoose will. So I don't know. Maybe you need both in your life.
Maybe. But
That's
mongoose is that's like an outside pet.
but that definitely makes sense that they had introduced the mongoose kind of recently in that area
Yeah.
to help quail that population. Interesting, because I wondered why mongoose.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
I did kind of say that I would talk about Gef and some of his claims that he made. Um, there's a lot of them, a lot of
There
claims that
are.
he made about who he was. But I ripped my favorite ones. I'll quote them. There's only 3 of them.
Okay.
So I will quote my favorite claims that Gef said. Quote, I am the Holy Ghost. That's impressive, right? That's
He
pretty
said
good.
that a lot.
He did. Yep. He claimed to be the Holy Ghost a lot. He said that, quote, I like this one. I am the 5th dimension. I am the 8th wonder of the world. He's a narcissist, I think.
He is.
And quote, I have 3 spirits, and their names are foe, faith, and truth. However, he didn't. However, is not part of the quote. That's me.
Sure.
Just so you know. He was very insistent to the Irving family that he was not a ghost. He said all the time that he was a flesh and blood creature, and his proof of this allegedly came in the form of him gifting them dead rabbits.
Which is weird because there's so many contradictions to this story because he would
Yeah.
also say stuff like, "Oh, I am the spirit of a mongoose. I'm the spirit of a man in the form of a mongoose. I'm the fucking Holy Ghost."
Right.
It's almost as if, and I don't want to get ahead too much, but it's almost as if this was fucking made up, and
It might
somebody
be.
was just riffing. Somebody was just riffing the whole time.
You think so?
Maybe like a 13-year-old girl. I don't know, but just like maybe.
Maybe.
Something to think about. Food for thought.
But very wild claims, nonetheless, right? Very absurd claims, and none of them seem to quite land, except for, again, the 13-year-old girl claiming that, well, yeah, he looks like a mongoose, and he brings us dead rabbits like a mongoose, and tells us sometimes that he's a mongoose, but other times tells us that he's the Holy Ghost.
Right. When he's not being a mongoose, his side gig is as the Holy Ghost.
And he would like get real aggressive and tell these people allegedly that he like his true form couldn't be comprehended, basically. um Okay, Gef, and that's why
Right?
he looks like a mongoose,
Yeah,
because
well, obviously.
you're so fucking powerful and that's the form that you choose. Whatever.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
choose.
I like, and we touched on this before, but he was such a dick just for no reason. And he would shout things at people And there's one thing that he shouted to Jim that stuck with me. And it's if he took too long opening the paper in the morning. Because, like back in the day, we used to get newspapers from the 1930s all the way up to when I was a fucking kid in like the 90s. People would get like newspapers delivered to them. And so if he took too long unfolding this fucking newspaper to read it, then Jeff would yell out, "Read it out, you fat-headed gnome."
Wow.
Which I'm going to start calling fat-headed gnome anytime if I'm driving and somebody pisses me off from now on. It's just be like, "Get the fuck out of the fast lane, you fat-headed gnome."
Oh my gosh. Well, you know how this works, though, Tobias. You're going to get a knock on your door, and it's going to be a little fat-headed gnome. He's going to be like, "You rang?"
Oh, man. Be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. No, I was just yelling at somebody. I didn't realize there would be consequences to your feelings."
As long as you offer him some, food and spirits, he'll be happy.
Yeah, be like, "Here's some mead and fucking cream or something." I don't know what a gnome's like. It doesn't matter.
You got a fat head, boy.
Right? Here's something to feed your fat fucking head.
Yeah. So you're saying that Jeff would often have these wild mood swings where he would go off and chastise the parents of the household, and would often just go on rages and rampages verbally.
Which is weird because 13-year-old girls aren't like that at all.
Not at all. They're super timid and kind, and there's no truth behind hormones whatsoever. So.
Yeah, definitely not raging fucking balls of hormones, just waiting to explode at anybody who fucking crosses their path. I mean,
no.
It's a mystery.
As a parent to a 13-year-old girl, I can promise you that she reminds me about no less than 6 times a day that she is the Holy Ghost. So.
Oh wow, interesting. Shut up, Mom! I'm the Holy Ghost. God, get out of my room.
Didn't you know? I'm incomprehensible. And that's I'm starting to think that maybe I have a changeling for a daughter.
Maybe.
Anyway, it is so absurd. But again, these are all things that the family claims. Just the family claims this. So the story continues to grow, right? And outsiders, other people, tabloids start cashing in on Gef the Talking Mongoose. And Tobias, why don't you just give the briefest rundown that you can of what publications were like in the 1930s?
Oh, 1930s? They were on... Okay, it wasn't as bad as previous decades, right? So the 19th century, it was real bad in terms of people just being willing to make stuff up, either to sell papers or support local tourism. By the time you got into the 1930s, like journalism was, I think it was taken more seriously, and I think it was more reliable, but probably not necessarily still to the standard we have today. I will say in the case of Gef the Talking Mongoose, I think one of the things that we might be able to tell about what was happening with journalism at this time, or one of our takeaways from this is how the story was treated. Because on the one hand, you would have a journalist that would show up and say, "Oh, hey, I swear to God, I heard this talking mongoose," or whatever. And on the other hand, you would have journalists show up and be like, "Yeah, this is horseshit. It's the girl. I literally saw her do it." But yeah, not terribly reliable by our what even are our fucking journalistic standards anymore? Modern journalism isn't terribly fucking reliable according to the standards of journalism that I grew up with. Old man rant.
Yeah, it's well, I think that publications came out before the bigger. I think like tabloids were coming out before the Examiner journalist came out and had his kind of bombshell moments. Not necessarily his bombshell moment, but I mean, they enjoyed the fact that it was so silly.
Sure.
So what ended up happening was people were now kind of coming out and taking some type of serious interest in Gef. And so they started, coming around. They want to interview the family. They want to talk to Gef. They want to get pictures of Gef. Um, there were alleged photos of Gef. I'm sure you saw them. And
Yeah.
they're not great. I think there's 3 of them in total, and he's like, he's not in the house. He's like taken outside on like the fence post. So it could it could be any mongoose. It could be anything. It could be a fucking
Really could.
Davy Crockett hat sitting there. It's so blurry and so terrible. I don't really know where those photos originated from. I don't know if they came from the Irving family themselves. I couldn't really seem to figure out where they were originally published, but I'll be honest, I didn't look that hard. It doesn't matter. We know this is bullshit, right? So
Yeah, the only evidence that I've seen presented was people claiming to hear the voice. And so you've got, on the one hand, a reporter from the Manchester Daily Dispatch who said, and I quote, after a visit to the Irving farm, had I heard a weasel speak? I do not know, but I do know that I have heard today a voice that I should never have imagined could issue from a human throat. Ugh. All right. Well, good for you, bud.
okay.
Right. But then, right, on the other hand, let's see. We had another reporter from the Isle of Man Examiner who said, let's see, he was being led out by Jim, and Voiry was kind of walking behind them. And so, again, I quote, on our way down, I noticed Voiry had a tendency to hang behind, and once again we heard a piping squeak, with Mr. Irving again wildly gesticulating and pointing to the hedge and whispering, "He's there, I tell you, he's there." This was really too much, for my hearing is very good, and the squeak without doubt was human and came from immediately behind us. We laughed over the whole incident for days because it was so badly done that it was extremely funny. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, she was very caught at that point.
Right.
So they looked right at Voiry and she's making these noises, but James is insistent that those noises are coming from Gef, and he's trying to draw their attention to a different part of the room so that she could continue to make her noises. Now, again, no, these were just strange noises. Also, it wasn't anything special or particular. They were just simply noises. It wasn't words.
Yeah. Right. And that's how it started, of course.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty rare for anybody to actually hear the conversational side of Gef the Talking Mongoose outside of the Irving family. And so we really only have their word on that. The only other evidence that was ever presented were some prints that were supposedly left in plasticine by Gef. Now, Harry Price, who I mentioned earlier, who did his own investigation, had asked Reginald Pocock of the Natural History Museum to evaluate the prints. Now, Pocock couldn't match them to anything, but he did say that maybe they could have been made by a dog, which we'll get into in a second because this is important. What he ultimately decided, and this is a direct quote, is, "There is no mammal in which there is such disparity in the size of the fore and the hind foot. I do not believe these photographs represent foot tracks at all. Most certainly none of them was made by a mongoose," which leads into the other physical evidence that was presented as being physical evidence of the existence of Gef, which was some fur. So this is during Harry Price's friend. He's referred to as Captain McDonald. That's not his real name. But I'm just going to use Captain McDonald because that's
Sure.
how that was the pseudonym that was being used for him. Anyway, when he was there, he was given some of what was supposed to be Jeff's hair, right? So he then sent that to Price, who in turn forwarded them to Martin Duncan, who conducted this analysis. And so what he had to say about it was, I have carefully examined them microscopically and compared them with hairs of known origin. As a result, I can very definitely state that the specimen hairs never grew upon a mongoose, nor are they those of a rat, rabbit, hare, squirrel, or other rodent. I am inclined to think that these hairs have probably been taken from a longish-haired dog or dogs. Furthermore, he goes on to say that the hairs looked as though they were cut from an animal because none of them had the root bulb that would have been attached had they been pulled out. So something else we know is that the Irvings had what I am sure was an adorable sheepdog named Mona. So it's not very much of a stretch to think that maybe they tried to push Mona's paws into some plasticine for these prints, cut off some of her hair, and was like, oh, look, it's Jeff's hair or whatever. You're stupid, right? You'll fall for this. But yeah, the likeliest explanation there, of course, is that they tried to fabricate this evidence using their dog, which they very much had. So,
and Mona, in good doggo fashion, she was just happy to be involved.
Of course. Yeah.
We didn't have DNA testing at the time, right? That wasn't a thing.
No.
So, I'm sure these people thought we could definitely get away with this. Forensics in general were very, we've talked about that before in old-timey killer cases, and even our sex pest episode, they just weren't good.
True. But they had microscopes, and they
did.
And there were people who knew to examine a sample that they knew to come from a dog versus the sample that was sent to them that was supposedly mongoose hair, and they could show pretty definitively that it was obviously dog hair and didn't come from a mongoose. And that's something that the Irving family, I'm sure, didn't think of, because in the early 30s they probably had no idea that fur, when examined on that level, was going to appear obviously different between different animal species.
Right. It is. If somebody tried that now in you wouldn't try that in 2025 because we all pretty much know that it could very easily be debunked.
Well, sure, except for people do try it in 2025 all the time, which is why, the FBI, what was it? They tested Sasquatch fur sent to them, and it just came from a deer.
Oh.
That shit still happens. People are. Let me put it this way. People are just as dumb today as they were in the fucking 1930s. And unfortunately, not everybody has kept up with education and the latest advances in forensic science. So yeah. And some of them probably just don't give a shit. They're like, they got their laugh. They don't care if you figure out it's some kind of animal fur instead of Sasquatch or Gef the Talking Mongoose or what the fuck ever, And some of them might actually think that they have something. They might have found some fur in some tree bark and they thought it was a Sasquatch and didn't realize that there are any number of bears who will absolutely rub themselves up against fucking a tree or a deer or something and get some fur caught in there. And so they were like, holy shit, this had to come from a Sasquatch.
Yeah. Regardless of what Melba Ketchum has said, we have not found Bigfoot DNA yet. We've got to cover that at some point, though. That's a crazy story.
Wait, what?
You don't know about Melba Ketchum?
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Erickson Project, yeah.
Sure.
That's, anyway, because there's still people that buy into that shit, and it's like, don't.
I thought you said, despite what, Jeff Meldrum said. And I'm like, I don't remember Meldrum saying we have Bigfoot DNA. That would be news.
That would be big news, yeah. No. Melba. Oh, Melba Ketchum.
Gotcha.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't think the family really expected this to get as far as they got. Let's be honest. Now, eventually, kind of once the reporters were like, yeah, this is all obviously the daughter making the noises, things definitely died down. It seemed maybe Gef himself entirely disappeared. Whatever happened to him there, it's really unclear. Eventually, when James Irving died, um, Margaret and Voiry were going to sell the house, and they had trouble selling the house because of its alleged haunting. Right? Nobody wanted to live with Gef. He was an asshole.
Right.
Who would?
Yeah, right.
Um,
No, it was my understanding that Harry Price published his memoir, in which he devotes an entire chapter to Gef in 1935. And then in 1936 is when they moved off of the family moved off of the Isle of Man.
oh,
And after that, there were no further reports.
okay.
The people who would eventually buy the house never had, like, they weren't haunted by a talking mongoose. And the family themselves never reported any subsequent Gef the Mongoose sightings or appearances or anything like that.
Interesting, because when I was researching it, I found that the buyer of the house, Leslie Graham, claimed to have shot and killed Gef and even put the Jeff's corpse on display.
Oh, wait. No, actually, now that you mention it, I do remember that.
Yep, and Voiry was like, "That's not Gef." Now you can also find pictures of this alleged Gef. It is like black and white. I mean, the picture is in black and white, but like the creature itself is black and white.
Right. I think
um,
that's obviously made up. And so
yeah,
what I was looking at was, yeah, there were no actual, like,
nothing
um,
concrete. Yeah,
well, I should say there were no sincere
sure.
sightings of Gef the Talking Mongoose. Yes, there was like the joke made, oh, look, I
I shot
killed
and killed
Gef or
him.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this was
But
him.
nobody should take that seriously.
No,
Nobody did take that seriously.
no.
So it would be
Um,
more accurate to say no sincere sightings, but yes, there, like, that did happen.
if
So
we're giving it
we're
any
not
water at
contradicting
all,
each other here, just to
yeah,
be clear.
right. If we're letting it hold any weight at all, um, yeah, Voiry said, nope, that's not him. She's the only one that saw him, so she would know, right? So there we go.
Sure.
And that was kind of the end of Gef. Now again, there's a lot of people that believe in this story. Voiry and Margaret, they all took it to their graves, insisting that
Yeah,
this
that's
was
true.
true. This absolutely happened, and there are people that again will be like, yeah, no, it's totally real. And that is very heavily debated because there is no evidence that says otherwise. In fact, there is evidence of hoaxing, what with the dog hair and
Right.
bad pictures, and I mean, watching Voiry make those noises, you know,
Right.
um,
Being
that's
literally caught in the act.
right.
And
I mean,
also, like, Gef would never show up when a legitimate investigator was there. So,
no,
like, he wouldn't show up to talk to, like, Harry Price's friend that he sent. He
yeah,
wouldn't show up for Harry Price. He wouldn't show up for anybody. Who was the other big name investigator? Nandor Fodor. He wouldn't show up for him. And shit, Nandor actually thought that Gef might be a legitimate anomalous phenomenon. He thought
yeah,
that Gef could have been some kind of sort of poltergeist manifestation. He thought
yep,
that he came from Jim instead of Voiry, interestingly enough, being like a splintered fraction of Jim's personality taken its own form. It was the part of him that was dissatisfied with his boring life on the Isle of Man, because prior to this, Jim he'd done a lot of traveling like that, like as part of his career. He had traveled all over the place, and so to suddenly be to be a farmer, a fucking sheep farmer on the Isle of Man, of all fucking places, all of a sudden must have been fantastically boring for him.
yeah.
And so that was Nandor Fodor's hypothesis, you know.
Yep.
So,
It's
but
yeah,
yeah,
he
wouldn't show
he
up.
showed up ready. I mean, he wanted this to be a thing, and
Right?
and Gef did not meet him halfway. So,
No,
that
never would.
is kind of the general consensus again. I think we all know that this didn't happen. I mean, I don't like to take a hard stance on a lot of things, but this one, I got a hard stance it with. This is probably bullshit.
It doesn't look good. I mean,
yeah.
I certainly, if I met somebody who insisted that people have to believe in this, I would think that they're either fucking stupid as shit or, a crazy person.
Yeah.
But if somebody is entertained by this and likes to go, oh, well, what if, maybe, yeah, that's fine, dude. We can still be friends. I don't care. Yeah, sure. What if? Okay, maybe. But all of the available evidence points towards this being a hoax.
Can you imagine ending a friendship with somebody because they believe in Gef the Talking Mongoose?
I would only do it if I had to, because the one thing I can't, it's true, the one thing I can't stand, and you don't see it as much now, I think, as you used to. I think there's been a real turn in this field, but people who insist that you believe in something without evidence. Now, I understand not wanting to be told that any experience was definitively something if we don't know for sure. So I can't sit here and tell somebody that the Irving family didn't experience anything unusual that they can't explain. I don't know that.
Right.
So yeah, if I was doing that, then I would be the asshole. Totally. But I'm not. So what bugs me though are people who, if you take what I would assume to be a very reasonable stance and say, okay, well, I don't believe in this largely because there's no good evidence, and I'm not saying definitively that it didn't happen, but I am saying that the overwhelming majority of the evidence points towards this being a hoax. So if somebody can't live with that, yeah, fuck off. We can't be friends. If you're going to get mad at me and yell at me, because people have, over that, then yeah, you're obviously a moron and I don't want to be friends with you. Like, that's a really stupid thing to get mad about. The idea that people have to believe in things without evidence, fine. Go join the flat earthers and the anti-vaxxers and all the other fucking folks, all the other fucking people who believe in shit that isn't fucking real in the corner, and you guys can just talk about shit that doesn't exist together, because I don't have time for it if that's how you're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias just does that shit on Saturdays and Tuesdays, so
true.
I mean, that's with his friends.
No, I like my tabletop role playing games, but like I said before, it's like it's all segmented, like it's distinct, right? Like, yeah. I like my made up shit to be made up, and everybody knows it's made up, and my real shit to be real, and you don't mix them.
Yeah. Right. Well, somebody has went through that maybe recently about my beliefs. It's very silly. Yeah. Anyway, there is another case I want to talk about. That's not Gef, but it's Gef as adjacent. And there's not enough on it to make its own episode. But this story to me is infinitely more interesting. So I'm going to get into it real quick. Tobias, have you ever heard of the Zaragoza Goblin?
Ooh. I don't know. I've heard of a lot of goblins.
A lot of goblins, yeah, I feel it. This one you may or may not have. I mean, this is kind of that one of those really weird ones. So this happened in November of 1934 to a family, the Palazon family in Zaragoza, Spain. Okay. And what was going on is their maid, the family maid, Pascuala, I think was her name. She was, kind of getting ready to cook some dinner, right? She turned on the stove. And as she turned on the stove, a voice screamed out, "Stop, you're hurting me." So,
all right.
So she did. She stopped and turned out all the lights and ran out of the kitchen while whatever this was insisting she turn the lights back on because they can't see.
Yeah, okay, I'll get to it in a second. I just have to get some clean pants.
So
I imagine what happened.
This voice continues to kind of talk at them, talk at the family, and they called the police. And the police came out and nothing was going on. They couldn't find the source of the voice. So the police left. And within 48 hours, the voice comes back again. And not just to the Palazon family, but to other families within this apartment building in Spain. And so the police come back out and they are also hearing this voice. And it's saying all kinds of things. It's interacting directly with people, but they can't see it. Initially, they thought that maybe the voice was coming from the wood stove, but because other people were reporting hearing it in other parts of the building, they weren't really sure. Now, of course, they thought this is fucking stupid, right? This is a hoax that's happening. Clearly, it's Pasquala doing it. So they made her leave the property, and even after she left the property, the voice continued. Um, they never found the voice at all. The governor of the town there actually called for a media blackout because he was insistent that maybe that this was a hoax. He didn't want fake news to be spreading around, so he didn't want the media reporting on it. And eventually the police kind of investigate a little bit further. They never find the voice, and the voice is never heard from ever again. And of course, it being Spain, they liken this to a potential duende. Is what they thought, which, if you don't know what a duende is, it's like
It's Spanish for goblin.
there you go. It's, yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's basically it.
right? It's a goblin. What are the things we have here? It's kind of like our pukwudgie, right? Um, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's
Sure.
just a general term for something anomalous and unexplained. Let's be real.
Right.
Anyway, again, I think that story is a lot cooler. I think it's a lot funner. I think it's a lot funnier. And I wanted to share that with everybody because I don't think anybody really knows about it.
That's a good one. I want to believe that it was just like a hobo living in their walls or something.
It could have been. There's a whole show about that.
Hobos living in people's walls?
Yeah, I watched it on Hulu. I can't remember what it's called. So it's about people who live in your house and you don't know about it.
Oh God, I want to watch that, but also not.
You'll never sleep again.
Right.
It's been 3 years. I'm so tired.
For real.
But that shit does happen. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that one day. But it is a real that is a real phenomenon. It could have been. Definitely could have been. I think the addition of this thing allegedly being hurt by the wood stove and things like that. I mean, supposedly maybe it was small enough to be in the wood stove, is kind of the intent there. But it could have been a person. Could have been. Either way, it was super interesting because we had authoritative figures get involved in this case, and they all heard it too.
Right.
So
well, and that's the big difference. It does raise some good points that I meant to mention about the Gef case that I didn't, but I have been reminded thanks to this account. So similarly, people had said that the sounds in the Gef the Talking Mongoose case were heard independently of each of the Irving family members. That is to say, like, without one of them there, as a way to try to rule out it being any particular person. But I think it would only take either Jim or Voiry to be there if they were doing it together. I don't think you would need both of them to be there. So if like Voiry just didn't happen to be there that time, then I think Jim could have still just done it. He could have made the noise or whatever. So yeah, also like their house was interesting because it had a wood panel interior, like the interior walls had wood paneling, but the paneling was like, there was a 3-inch gap or so between the wood paneling and the actual wall. Right. And so there are all of these cracks and little peepholes and shit in there, which sounds creepy, like a people under the stairs situation. But anyway, and so what I think it was Harry Price had speculated was, as a result, like the entire house was just like one big speaking tube.
yeah.
So you could say something into like the wall in one room and it would travel through the wood paneling and be heard clear as day somewhere else, which would make it really fucking easy to pretend like your house was haunted by any stupid thing you wanted, up to and including the ghost of the world's coolest mongoose.
And I have some pop culture references to share with you guys if you need a visual. You ever seen The Happening?
Yes.
A terrible movie, but it's great to riff
Awful.
on.
Yeah,
At the
true.
very end, right? They're both on opposite sides of the property, but there's that tube leading to both of those underground sides of the property where they can talk to each other and hear each other in.
Right.
Because that is a thing. You ever watch Bob's Burgers?
Yeah, totally.
There's that episode where Bob gets stuck in the wall and ends up pretending to be stuck in the wall because he doesn't want to interact with his in-laws.
Yeah.
But he's on the bottom floor and he can hear the whole family even on the top floor.
True.
Because again, this is a thing that can happen.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's kind of what they're saying in this case. Potentially this is the way the house was built. So even if you had Vory leave the room, she could just go to another room and do the voice.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And as far as like you said, they would have these people kind of leave the room, but did they have them leave them? Both leave the room? Did they leave the property entirely? Probably not. Right.
I doubt it. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, again, the fact that the girl was caught literally making the noises should just be enough to go case closed.
Right. Well, that was the other point I wanted to bring up. So Nandor Fodor was of the opinion that this was a combination of real events, like true, some sort of true phenomenon, and then also hoaxing, because what he said had happened and sort of what he had, or what he declared as a common circumstance in poltergeist cases, was that after the family started getting attention for it, they then felt pressured to keep up the manifestation. So according to Nandor, then it started out real, like something was really happening to them. There really was some kind of weird poltergeist phenomenon in their home, and they started getting attention for it, at which point they felt pressured for it to perform on demand, because they wanted people to believe them, and that's when they started hoaxing stuff, which is fine. And if you want to believe that, like, that's totally cool, but there's no evidence for it, and as a result, the only evidence we have points towards a hoax. So that's probably the most favorable interpretation, and I get that, and I think if people want to believe that, I think that's fine. But again, you got to be okay with people thinking the whole thing was a hoax, because what happens inevitably in any case where somebody would do that is that the hoax is found out. That ends up being all of the evidence you have to look at is the hoaxed stuff, and the whole thing is written off as a hoax. So if you don't want that to happen, don't fucking hoax things. And if you do fucking hoax any part of your experience, don't be surprised when people don't fucking believe you. Like, you're not allowed to be butthurt over that. Like, that's on you. That's your fucking fault. So,
yeah. Things that start off as real and then eventually turn into a hoax in and of itself. I wouldn't know anything about that. But if you'd like to learn more about that, you should probably read my book, Andred Cold Searching for the Man from Lanulos. Just saying.
Book
By
club.
the way.
Well played.
But that is something that does happen. It certainly does.
It is.
Out of, either desperation to feel special or wanted, or just to seem more important than you actually are. That's something that I'm sure happens more often than we probably, are led to believe in this community, because then, imagine how fucking embarrassing it is to go, yeah, that happened to me, but this part didn't happen to me. I lied about that part. Just saying that you lied in general is already hard enough.
Well, you're done at that point. You're done.
Right. That's it.
Nobody's going to believe you again.
Right. And you know that, so, I mean, absolutely. I don't know why Nandor thought that is that his name? Nandor?
Nandor, yeah. Like the vampire from What We Do in the Shadows.
If I have more kids, I'm gonna name. I hope I have twin boys, and I'm gonna name one Tiberius and one Nandor.
You should. They'll be fucking badass.
Yeah, so that's pretty sweet. He wanted to buy it. Obviously, he was all for it. I don't know why he seems to think that there was any legitimacy to it at all. That
It fit with his pet theory. The same
Yeah.
reason anybody does with this stuff. We see it today.
Yeah.
People encounter something and they're like, how can I wedge this into my pet theory to make myself seem smarter and more important?
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be it. I mean, because there's no evidence, so
Nope.
well,
Wishful thinking.
I mean,
There's no shortage of that.
of course, Voyer is going to take it to her grave. Why would she get on her deathbed and go, "Yep, made it all up"? People don't
Yep.
normally do that.
Everybody start making fun of me and hating me a little bit.
Yeah,
Nobody does that.
people love the deathbed confession, but let's be real. How many times has that happened in the paranormal? Um, Once, and it wasn't the person who died that said, "Oh yeah, this is all bullshit." It was his family, who did it. Ray Wallace. That's the only person I could think of that this has ever happened with. Why would you? I mean, I don't know what people think dying is like, but usually it's a slow, drawn out process. Usually you don't have those final moments to kind of air your grievances before you die. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
Usually you're unconscious.
right.
First, if you're lucky. So anyway, people use that as evidence, right? Maintained it till the day they died. Okay, that doesn't mean anything. They maintained it while they were alive too.
Yeah, right. Like, great.
So I don't know. It is a fun story though. I do enjoy it. I like talking about it, right? It's cool. And I like squeezing in the Zaragoza goblin in there because that's, again, something nobody ever talks about. And it's
True.
And everybody talks about how Gef is such a unique situation. I don't feel like it's all that unique. Poltergeist activity is old. That's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
They made a whole movie. It's called Poltergeist, and then they made sequels to it.
That's true.
I'm just saying. When the little girl was talking to the people in the TV. I mean, again, this isn't new, folks. This isn't unique. As far as like real life cases go, that's again subjective because we don't have empirical proof of the paranormal yet. So I don't know, but I'm just saying, if a mongoose is in your house and your daughter can see it, then you should be able to get a damn good picture of them. Otherwise nobody's going to believe you anyway. Well, some people might believe you, but for the most part, I mean, that's just not evidence for you to say that it's happening.
Right.
It's just not. I don't know. Tobias, have we covered everything? Is there anything we're leaving out here?
Nope. I feel great about it. I'm sure there's always more you could cover, but
Sure.
I don't know what else there is to say about Gef the fucking Talking Mongoose. Really. It's a cool story. It's not fucking real. That's it.
Yeah, he's the eighth wonder of the world. That's some P.T. Barnum shit right there. Like, that's a P.T. Barnum claim.
That is some imaginative child stuff. Like, it's true. Like, she sounds like she was a very intelligent, imaginative young lady. And she picked up all kinds of stuff. Probably from her dad, because Gef would do stuff like swear and shit. And that wasn't very ladylike. But yeah, I mean, when you're 13, you're going through a lot of changes, and life feels tumultuous. I think that this was probably a kind of outlet for her, where she could just get away with shit she couldn't get away with normally.
Yeah.
She couldn't call her dad a fat-headed gnome under any other circumstance other than speaking as Gef the Mongoose. She couldn't fucking swear and yell at people and call them stupid. Like all the teenage outbursts that we all had. Like that's what she was channeling through Gef the fucking Mongoose.
Yeah.
And it should seem obvious to anybody, to any grown up, but yet here we are, you know.
Here we are. Right, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know. And she's 13. She's a girl. And then in 1931, living on the Isle of Man. I mean, she's got a lot of time on
Gotta
her
do
hands.
something.
A lot of
Yeah.
rage, That's, but no, I agree with you. That's it for me. I mean, I don't think that there's anything more to this. Like every episode, if you guys find some smoking gun that we didn't cover, let us know. Maybe we're missing something here, but for the third time, need to reiterate that she was caught making the noises while her dad tried to distract the people there away from her. What else do you need?
Honestly, there's nothing that anybody can say. And this is the simple genius of statements like fucking Nandor Fodor's, right? There's nothing you can say that is going to convince anybody who believes that this was a real phenomenon that then was partially hoaxed when they felt pressured to produce manifestations, right? And the reason for that is that you cannot disprove the existence of something, right? Like nobody could say there is no God and then somehow like prove that.
Right.
Because that's not logical. That's not how rational thinking works. You can't spend your time trying to disprove the existence of things, because the only shit you should be taking seriously in the first fucking place are things with evidence, with existing evidence that they exist. So, you can't prove a negative. Like that has existed, like that idea has existed in logic for fucking ever. You cannot prove a negative. So it's not on us to prove that there was no Gef the Talking Mongoose. It is on people who believe in Gef the Talking Mongoose to prove that there was. And there is no evidence to support that. And all of the evidence we have, unfortunately, or at least the vast majority of it, and certainly the most reliable evidence that we have, points towards a hoax. So, in the spirit of critical thinking, what else is there left to talk about? Like I said, you cannot prove a negative. So if people want to believe that, great. Okay. Awesome. There's nothing I can do about it. It'd be like trying to talk somebody out of their religious beliefs, because it's not based in rationality. It's not based in critical thinking. It's not based in logic. And you can't use a logical argument to talk somebody out of that. So all I can really say is we'll have to agree to disagree, as long as you're cool with, me siding with the evidence on this one and saying this almost certainly was not real.
I'm going to make an offer. I invite Gef into my home. Here for everybody to hear. I want you all to use your powerful brains and your manifestation to manifest Gef the Talking Mongoose into my home. I dare that motherfucker to come here. I dare him. It's a dare. He's got to do it now, right? So that's my offer to Gef. Prove me wrong, Gef. Or Gef. I'm gonna call him Gef just to make him angrier.
I hate that.
And he does too. I'm sure of it. What more can you do at this point? That's, again, the door's open, my guy. I invite my home all the time to all kinds of weird creatures. One day, I'm going to walk in and it's just going to be a fucking mess in here.
Right. Just wall-to-wall fucking cryptid bash, I guess.
Going on. I'll have a mantis cuck in the corner, right? Bigfoot slinging his dick all around like, see? It's a decent size. Fucking Gef
right.
in the walls making fun of fucking Bigfoot.
And his weird dog dick.
This weird dog dick. It'll be a great time. The fucking alien that was autopsied here, also completely naked because that's what they're known for. It'll be
They
great.
don't wear clothes. They've evolved beyond clothes.
Beyond clothes, so it'll be a good time. But yeah, I don't have nothing else.
Nope,
Again,
we're good.
I
We did
will share the story of Thom with everybody in video form if you'd like over on the Patreon. Make sure you check that out. Still got plenty of Mothman sightings to get through.
Yes, I'll be starting those up again. I took a week off because of Frogman, but I'm going to start back up.
Tons of other stuff. I am going to kind of go over the Patreon a little bit, and I might add a couple of things. So get in early on that. We'll see. But anyway, patreon.com/Wednesdays Talk. With that being said, guys, we'll see you back here next Wednesday.